بسم الله الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. All praises be to Allah, may Allah's peace and blessings be upon His Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and those who follow in his footsteps till the last day. Inshallah, today we'll start. We are still talking about al-ahkam, al-wad'iyya, and we said the rulings in Sharia are divided into two: ahkam أحكام تكليفية and أحكام شرعية. أحكام تكليفية we have covered, and we said these are the rulings pertaining to directly to our actions, whether what we do is obligatory, wajib, or mandatory, or a duty, or mustahab, recommended, or it is mubah, permissible, or it is prohibited, muharram, or at the end, makruh, disliked. And we said, pertaining to ahkam wad'iyya, are these ahkam governing the overall actions, but it's not related directly to human being action. It is related to the acts of worship itself, mentioning its cause, the reason behind doing it, or what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made a reason to do or not to do, or whether it is, sound, or it is, not regarded in Sharia, which is the false or fasid, rejected, or whether there is a mani' preventing it from being done or not. Last time we talked about the two things. We talked about the cause, the reason behind it, and the condition, the shart. And we are talking today about the third matter pertaining to doing or not to doing, which is actually opposite to the condition, to the shart. And this is called al-mani'. We are on page 53, or sorry, 52, at the beginning of number 3. You can start reading, Sheikh Abdul Majid, تفضل.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Third category, al-mani', inhibitor. Literally, the word mani' means prevention. Technically, it refers to that which necessitates by its existence the non-existence of something else, but does not necessitate by its non-existence the existence or the non-existence of that thing. I read again. Al-mani', inhibitor. Literally, word mani' means prevention. Technically, it refers to that which necessitates by its existence the non-existence of something else, but does not necessitate by its non-existence the existence or the non-existence of that thing. I'll continue to read the text on the page number 53. For example, murder in relation to inheritance or the menstrual period in relation to salah. If murder takes place, the murderer will not be eligible for inheritance of the one he murdered. Similarly, if menstruation begins, salah is not permissible. On the other hand, if there is no murder or menstruation, it does not necessarily follow that there will be inheritance or salah. Mani' is therefore the opposite of shart, since the existence of a condition necessitates the existence of a thing, whereas the existence of a mani' negates the existence of a thing. In order to differentiate between sabab, the cause, shart, the condition, and mani', prevention, look at this example of zakah on wealth. The sabab for its obligation is the presence of the nisab, and the shart is that 1 year should have passed before it becomes payable, while the mani' for the payment of zakah is the existence of debt. You explain, Sheikh, before I go to the footnotes? Sheikh, you are muted.
Mani', sorry for that. Mani' here is what he said actually. It's the preventer, the thing that prevents something from happening. Like nowadays in Hajj, they made permission to Hajj, okay? Yani a necessary thing. This cannot be added as a condition for Hajj because we know the conditions in Hajj. But this would be an inhibitor or a preventer from doing Hajj. The ulama, they said this can be classified as mani', as something preventing one from Hajj. If you cannot carry a license to Hajj or Hajj permit, you are not, you cannot do Hajj. So they made it from the preventers, from the inhibitors. He said technically here the meaning of mani', which is opposite to the shart. He said the meaning here, it means, it refers to that which necessitates by its existence, and when the mani' is there, the other thing which is, which should happen if there was no mani', it cannot exist. Okay, so by the existence of mani', there is non-existence, or you cannot find the other thing happening. But it doesn't mean, it does not necessitate by its non-existence the existence or the non-existence of that thing. And he gave some examples. He says murder in relation to inheritance, or like he gave it, he said if a person, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us, killed one of his relatives to whom he is so connected, like a parent, or not only even a murder, the ulama, they said even an accident, that might be due to the, the reckless driving. If he was driving his father and he made an accident, and that accident caused, his father to be killed, then he is not entitled to inherit from his father. If it was proven that it was due to recklessness of driving, or due to his, he didn't take precautions. So this is, the murder is worse than that. If a person would kill, or a woman spouse killed his wife, or the wife killed her husband to inherit from him, then the ulama, they said, he would be deprived from such inheritance. And why is this? This is again a protection for the person's life, because it might happen that the man would be very wealthy, and this he might be, for example, hand-fisted, a miser, and his relatives would kill him to get rid of him, to get the money for themselves. So the Sharia, in order to protect one's life, it actually deprived him from inheritance. So this will not give anybody, any thought about such crime. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us. So it happens. Sometimes some people, they do it, indirectly, but Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is behind them, and they will find their, punishment. In this life, maybe, but in the hereafter, it would be for granted, unless Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgives. Also the mana, the other mana he gave example of is the menstrual period in relation to salah. A woman during the menstrual period, it would prevent her from doing salah or siyam. However, siyam, she should compensate for it, but salah, it's forgiven. Okay, it's forgiven not to do the salah. He said, he gave more explanations. He said if a murder takes place, the murderer will not be eligible for the inheritance of the one he murdered. Similarly, if menstruation begins, salah is not permissible. Now, there is a point here, nice to mention for our knowledge, that a woman, if she, for example, was opt to do fajr, but she didn't do it, or to do dhuhr, and she, for example, delayed it, and she experiences her period, then that salah that she didn't do, she must do or compensate for it after she becomes, pure. And many women, they don't know this. They don't know that she should then do the salah. Rather, some fuqaha and some ulama added into that she should do both, those salah that can be combined. If she, for example, missed dhuhr, delayed dhuhr, and she experienced menses, then she has to do dhuhr and asr when she becomes pure, compensating for that salah, or maghrib and isha, or fajr in that case. He said here, and we know he said the mana is therefore the opposite of shart, because since the existence of a condition necessitates the existence of a thing, whereas the existence of a mana negates it. Okay, negates the existence of that thing. He said he gave a nice differentiation between sabab and shart and mana, and he said sabab, okay, والشرط والمانع, those three need to be differentiated, need to be distinguished from each other. And he gave an example with zakah on the wealth. He said the sabab, the cause behind the obligation of zakah on a wealth is the nisab. Okay, and the shart, if a man, for example, has a lot of money, at the first month in a year, he has $1 million riyal. But by the end of that year, before the year, finishes, he spent all the $1 million riyal. So nisab is there, but the shart, was not complete yet. Year was not elapsed, so he's not obliged to do salah, to pay in zakah. Same, the mana here, okay, he said, while the mana for the payment of zakah is the existence of debt. Some ulama, they said if a person is in debt, okay, and the debt covers such money, and the money, the debtor, the person who gave him the money, is entitled to get his money with some explanation and details, then he has to pay debt first before paying zakah, and he will be exempted if the debt, will cover, will take his money less than nisab. And inshallah, we can elaborate on this later. If you want to go over the footnote, you can go over footnote number 71.
Yeah, okay. 71. Page number 52, footnote number 71. It is a consistent, existent, apparent characteristic which prevents the establishment of a law. Categories of mani. Number one, mani wujub, obligation inhibitor. For example, if a person killed another person deliberately, the law of retribution, qisas, would become obligatory for him. However, it was found out that the killer was the father of the murdered person, retribution would be prevented. Thus, fatherhood is an inhibitor for the obligation of retribution. I'll read again. Footnote number 71. It is a consistent, existent, apparent characteristic which prevents the establishment of a law. Categories of mani'. Number 1, mani' wujub, obligation inhibitor. For example, if a person killed another person deliberately, the law of retribution, qisas, would become obligatory for him. However, if it was found out that the killer was the father of the murdered person, retribution would be prevented. Thus, fatherhood is an inhibitor for the obligation of retribution. Sheikh, is this all the time or there are exceptions for this?
يعني the ulama, they said there is no qisas. Qisas cannot take place here. But it depends. Sometimes it might happen that the judge or the ruler might rule out that this person, this father, should be killed for another reason, not qisas. Okay? It's because, for example, ta'zir. This is called ta'zir. But the qisas here, he's talking about qisas. And qisas, which is a fixed punishment, in Sharia, there is no qisas, for father because he killed his son. But the exception, it might, comes to the judge that this father, did the murder for not, it's not a legitimate reason, okay, why he would kill his son. Huh? Okay, see, he might be killed, ta'zir, in accordance to the ta'zir, which will come with us, inshallah. Okay? Yes.
Right.
Okay.
Point number, note number 2, mani' sihha, validity inhibitor. The waiting period idda is an inhibitor for the validity of marriage of a woman if a contract took place during the waiting period. Mani' sihha, validity inhibitor. The waiting period idda is an inhibitor for the validity of a marriage of a woman if a contract took place during the waiting period. Note, the shart is the opposite of the mani'. Thus, absence of a mani' is a shart, and the absence of a shart is a mani'. Footnote number 72, that is, the killer will not inherit from the one he killed. There must be other factors. Footnote number 74, for the existence of a legal ruling, 3 factors must exist. Number 1, existence of causes. Number 2, existence of conditions. Number 3, absence of inhibitors. If any of these factors are not present, the legal ruling is automatically cancelled. If in the example mentioned by the author, the nisab exists and the passage of a year has taken place and the debt is absent, the payment of zakah becomes obligatory. However, if any one of the 3 factors is absent, that is, his savings have not reached the nisab, a year has not passed since he reached the nisab, or he has debts, zakah is not obligatory. That's all. We go back to the point number 4, Sheikh.
Okay.
Sahih.
Okay, inshallah. The qisas from the father, why it is not, for example, the ulama, actually, the fuqaha actually talked about it, because there is a hadith, some of them based that on the hadith, and this hadith, some ulama, they said it's a weak hadith, and they say that usually it won't be the case. Usually a father will not, do that at all, unless there is some reason, okay, behind it, or it was, for example, by mistake. And Imam Malik, rahimahullah, he ruled out that if it was deliberate and it was clear that the father killed his son, deliberately, for 100% it was amd, then he has to be killed, not because he killed his son, but due to, to the killing itself. The ulama, they said this should go to the courts, and in the court they will know what it was all about, and they might they might rule that person to be killed, whether they would say it's ta'zir or any kind, okay? Because if it would if it would be left, which was not the case, usually why the ulama, they said that won't be the case, because no father would kill his own son, and it's very, very far thing that's happening. But if it would happen, then the courts would look into the case and would judge it and rule it out. Back to the mani', he said there is a mani' wujub. First of all, he said it is a consistent, existent, aberrant characteristic. It is something that's very clear, and there is no doubt about that this mani' prevents the establishment of a law. Okay. For example, the muhrim in haram, or if he is going and he assumed ihram for umrah or hajj, this is a mani' from the execution or the marriage contract to take place. Okay. And it was mani'. So if he would do, because in ihram you cannot participate, cannot propose a woman and deal in a marital contract or a marriage. Nobody can do. The ulama, they regard it as mani', and they regarded a contract that's done during hajj or umrah as fasid, as will come with us. And they say that some people, they might, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala save us, get their marriage contract nullified or void due to the fact that they had not completed or finished their umrah. We had heard that some people would go for umrah, and if they find, it's so crowded, they might release from ihram and go back home. And the ulama, they said, if this person wants to know that he would be still in a state of ihram, and if he would do a marriage contract, in that case, his marriage contract would be fasid due to the preventer, the ihram he is in. So he doesn't know, but this might take place, and it's due to ignorance of the people. Because ihram in hajj and umrah, it cannot be nullified or released from the commencement. After a person says, labbaik Allahumma umratan or labbaik Allahumma hajjan, it should go and continue till he finishes, or or does what pays the fidya and shave his head and release from haram, in accordance to the Sharia. So he said here we have two categories of mani', like in the conditioner. We have mani' wujub, obligation inhibitor or preventer, and he gave an example, and he said the wujub of qisas, the qisas, the retribution, to become obligatory, there should be no parenthood. Okay, and he gave this example. So this example is debated amongst fuqaha. And he said he gave the mani' of sahha, okay, validity inhibitor, and he gave like the waiting period. Idda is an inhibitor for the validity of marriage of a woman, okay, if a contract took place during the waiting period. Then he said here the shart is the opposite of the mana, thus the absence of a mana is a shart, okay, and the absence of a shart is a mana. And you can look onto shart and mana to be opposite of each other. Okay, the shart, if it is absent, okay, then we would say it is mana, okay, and the shart, if it exists, then the mana has been removed. He said here, we finished, I guess, all number 72, you read it, huh?
Number 53 finished, Sheikh.
Okay,
yeah,
53.
74 up to 74. Point number 74, I finished.
Okay, so he said
Now
70. Yeah, let me finish. The killer will not inherit from the one he killed, and we mentioned this. And he said there must be other factors. And when he mentioned, on the other hand, if there is no murder or menstruation, it does not necessarily follow that there will be inheritance or salah, because there are other factors that takes place with inheritance or with the salah. Okay, this is what he meant here. Okay, you can go. You can carry on, inshallah.
Okay, sir. I will read all the text before going to the footnote under this category, Sheikh.
Okay.
Item number 4, Sahih and Fasid. Sahih, which means healthy.
Before you go, we forgot the number 74, because it is something we have to understand. The ulama, they said, for the existence of a legal ruling, 3 factors must exist. And the ulama, they say in Arabic, وجود السبب وتوفر الشروط وانتفاء الموانع. They made it like this. They said وجود السبب, the cause, the presence of the causes or the reasons, and توفر الشروط, the conditions must be all, there and fulfilled, and there should be no inhibitors or no preventers. So he said if any of these factors are not present or are not looked at, the legal ruling is automatically cancelled. Okay, so let's for example look into an example. He gave example here. He said if in the example mentioned by the author, the nisab exists and the passage of a year has taken place and debts are absent, then the payment of zakah becomes obligatory. However, if any one of the 3 factors is absent, then his savings have not reached the nisab. An example, like, or a year has not elapsed past since he reached the nisab, or he has debts, zakah is not obligatory, and Allah knows best. Yes, go ahead. Sahih and Fasid.
Sheikh, what is breaking?
Allah musta'an. Right. Let me then get out and come back to you, okay? You can stop recording and resume. You can just pause the recording, inshallah.
Abdul Majid, check your internet. Maybe that's one of the reasons we can hear the Sheikh.
What?
No, I'm just wondering, your internet is okay, Brother Abdul Majid?
Okay, let me check that. Let me check.
Yeah, it could be that because
okay.
I can. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. I hope inshallah this time the voice will be clear. You can read inshallah.
Yes, Sheikh. Sheikh, can I read now?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. Point number 4, Sahih and Fasid. Sahih, healthy, is literally the opposite of Saqim, which is sick. Technically, it refers to the correct execution of ibadat, religious rituals, and mu'amalat, the business transactions. For example, if salah is made fulfilling all its shurut, conditions, along with its arkan, the pillars, and guarding against its mawani', inhibitors, even though it may be only in the worshipper's conviction and not in reality, it will be considered to be sahih, that is valid. Similarly, if a business transaction is carried out in the legal way with something that is permissible and the seller has the ability to hand over the commodity and has full ownership in reality, then it is considered to be sahih. If, for example, someone sells something which he thinks belongs to someone else, then it becomes clear that the commodity really belongs to him. The sale is sound and complete. Mu'amalat, business transaction, depend on the external reality, whereas ibadat, ritual, depends on the conviction of the doer. Fasid in the Arabic language means faulty, defective. Technically, it refers to ibadat or mu'amalat which are not correctly executed, such as salah before its time, selling what does not belong to oneself. Synonymous to fasid is batil, except that according to Abu Hanifa rahimahullah, there is a difference between the two. According to him, fasid is what is originally legislated by the religion, but is prevented by a factor. For example, selling a mud of wheat for a mud of wheat plus 1 dirham. Selling 1 mud of wheat for 1 mud of wheat is originally permissible. So, if the dirham is removed, then the sale is valid in view of the fact that it was fundamentally permissible. You like to go over it, Sheikh?
Yes, let me go over it inshallah. Like the point here with Sahih and Fasid, that we should realize that Sahih is, he said, healthy, which is, literally the opposite of Saqim, or sound, you know. Like, for example, a person, he has a sound reasoning. His aql is sahih, okay? Against the one who's, drunk or something. Sahih also sound, the soundness of the uqud, for example. And it's, today I was listening to a lawyer, and this lawyer had a transaction put forward to him. And, he was, a person came, approached him, seeking advice with regard to selling a land with very, unfortunately, it was far less than the market price. Due to him, his argument was his father has reached, an age where he has, what they called in Arabic kharaf, and in English they call it, what do you call this kharaf? He's he started not to recognize things with a sound mind. So he said such dealing or transaction is not sahih. It is fasid. It's not sound in accordance to Sharia. Rather, it is false and it is rejected. And how can I appeal, provided that that person who bought from my father, or from the from that old man, sold it already to a lady. And I was actually mistaken, because the lady is the one who questioned about the case. The lady who bought that land, she said, I was called by the court to get that land back to the heirs, or not to heirs, to the sons who regarded their father as not in his complete soundness of reasoning. Then he said to her, first of all, do you know, or do you have any link to the first transaction between the old man and that person? Were you informed about such thing that might have been a deceit? She said, no, never. I didn't plan or plot with that person, to anything. He said, then alhamdulillah, if it is so, then the Sheikh will ask those sons to bring proofs that you are well acquainted with such, first transaction, and that their father was not in the sound, reasoning, or sound, it has not the soundness and eligibility to be Rashid, to be mature in his maturity. And he's over being mature, but maturity here in the sense that he knows and he realizes what he does. But if it is so, then you cannot, the judge will not take the land from you. The land is already yours, but he will ask the son to raise, or his claim, or to reclaim against the first buyer. Okay, so this is, if it was the first buyer, it would be different case. The judge might ask that person to return back the land. And why the lawyer asked this woman whether she was acquainted and well informed about such transaction, because usually this is what the people, they do in order to to gain, and not to get that land back to the owners. Someone will buy it and sell it right away to someone else, so that they won't get the money, the land back. They might get the money, or there might be some reconciliation in this part. So he said her Sahih is literally opposite to Saqim, and he said technically it refers to the correct, way the ibadah is done, or the muamala took place. And he gave an example of Salah. Salah is made fulfilling all its conditions, along with its arkan, and guarding against its mawana. Okay, and if a person did his Salah, fulfilling the shurut, he was in the wudu, in the state of tahara, and again also he did it at the the right time, not before the time. These are one of the shuruts, and he did it facing the qibla to the best of his ability. Even if it was proven that he was not facing the qibla, it's something else. But these are the shurut. Then one of the arkan is to do it, while standing position, if he has the ability. And he did it with all the arkan, and there was no mawani'. Mawani' is like if he was, for example, having, filthy or impurities on his body, or on his clothes, then he has to remove that. This prevents him from salah. So this salah is correct. And he said, even though it may be only in the worshipper's conviction. As we said, conviction means, this is what he believes. He started his salah thinking that the Qibla is this direction. Or his salah, he thought the time has commenced. With the difference here, that his salah is okay, correct, but if he discovers that his salah was not at that time, then he has to do the salah again. But if he hasn't known and he never noticed, the salah would be valid, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the most merciful. He said, similarly, if a business transaction is carried out in the legal way with something that's permissible, and the seller has the ability to hand over the commodity and has full ownership in reality, then it is considered to be sahih, to be valid and sound transaction. He said, if, for example, someone sells something which he thinks belongs to someone else, then it becomes clear that the commodity really belongs to him. The sale is sound and complete. This is very strange. Usually this is not done because no one should sell something which is not under his ownership or under his possession unless he has authority. He was given attorney. He said mu'amalat, business transaction depend on the external reality, whereas ibadat depends on the conviction of the doer. Yani mu'amalat, it should be done in accordance to real matters, while in the ibadah matters, it depends on the conviction of the doer. So if a person, for example, thought that or forgot about an impurity on his clothes and he made the salah, his conviction at that time was forgetfulness about such impurity, his salah would be valid. But if his conviction was, because this depends, the shurut of salah for tahara, it should be also a reality. So if he thought or believed that he was in a state of wudu, and after salah he discovered without doubt, no doubt here, because we told you certainty overcomes any doubt, and he found out that his salah was not valid due to to some reason he remembered that he invalidated his wudu, then we would say to him, even if it was in your conviction, your wudu was valid, but now you discovered that it was not, then you have to redo the wudu or make wudu and redo your salah. I hope, inshallah, the difference here is clear. He mentioned fasid, and I'll just, we will stop here. You know why? Because I have to leave at 8. I have, to call somebody. So we'll just leave the time for questions now. And inshallah, next week, we'll go over again the sahih and fasid in more details, because this is necessary to be known by all of us, whether with regard to ibadah, to acts of worship, or regards to the transactions. It is something crucial and needed and necessary, okay, to be known by all of us. And mentioning it here in Usool al-Fiqh, is, as we said, we are taking it in a general sense. We are trying to give some examples, cite upon some examples, but it's not, we can say, some as perspectives of this Sahih and Fasid, as will come with us, inshallah, later in more details. We will look into it from different perspectives or different schools of thought. Okay, so we'll stop here, inshallah. Next week we'll carry on. If you have questions, you can ask. If there is no questions, then we will, inshallah, end up our class today.
Just a quick one, Sheikh.
Okay.
Regarding the shart and the mani and then the other thing that we discussed, if a person has the wealth and the strength, and although the journey to Hajj is safe and secure, but he has a debt. If he goes to the debtor and then asks his permission, I have money either to repay your debt or perform the Hajj, are you allowing me to pay your debt later and continue my Hajj? If he does that, is the Hajj valid, Sheikh?
Yani this is debatable between fuqaha and ulama, because they said yani this person might, Allah knows best, and he might die before paying such debt. And some of them, they said to take any permission of the debtor. And if the debtor would say, they put it another way, they said, he said, give me a permission to go to Hajj, and inshallah, if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala extend my life, I will pay you later. Then they said it's okay. And some ulama, they said, no, unless he says you are forgiven if something happens. Okay. So I hope, for the person who would do Hajj, it's better for him to pay the debt, okay, before he goes to Hajj, to be, to have peace of mind and heart, and to do Hajj really, what we can say, purely for the sake of Allah, without having, something in his, what we can say, in his dhimma, and he is being, asked to pay such money. Because some people, for example, might burden him to go to Hajj, but it might not be the case in some, maybe he will be bashed and he would say, go for Hajj, okay? Especially if it is an obligatory Hajj. But since Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made it obligatory on him to do his Hajj, okay? Unless he can, he knows, this person, he would make a bequest, and he would say to his, sons or to his descendants, pay this person from so and so, even if you sell such and such land. And he has something to cover such debt. We would say, inshallah, there might be an excuse for him. But if there is, and especially those people who are coming from very far lands, to do Hajj, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has not made it obligatory in you if you cannot, for example, if you don't have, and if you cannot pay the debt. So the debt is, especially if the time of the debt has elapsed, then he has to pay the debt. So it depends on the situation, and it's better to ask, based on the situation again. Okay. I hope, inshallah, clear.
Yes, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh.
And all of these questions we ask sometimes, we can ask a general questions, but when it comes to specific, there might be some conditions, there might be some preventions that we should be looked at. There might be some situations that might say this can be or this cannot be. Okay, any more questions, brother?
Yes, Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah. Brother, tafadhal.
Yes, just a quick question. Is there a specific way to utilize your wealth for charities? For example, after paying zakat, you want to do some charity. So is there a specific guidelines, like order number 1, like to spend on Sadaqah Jariyah or on needy food, or you can give to some organizations whereby they help in African countries? So is there any specific guidelines?
Yes, no doubt. The brother is asking about paying or in charity after he pays zakah and he has some extra money. The ulama, they said the best thing is to to try to spend such wealth on the relatives who are poor and who are in need of such wealth. And this is one. Another thing which would be, which would be really rewarding is sadaqah jariyah. And if a person, for example, has a lot of wealth and he could, for example, do continuous, endowments that would, for example, pay back for itself, and he can, for example, cherish or sponsor orphanage or his own relatives, poor amongst the relatives or amongst those who are close to him. This would be a very nice thing to be done. So the priority is to get to these projects. And if a person, for example, has a lot of wealth that can make or build an endowment where he can give, spend such extra money or the profit that he gets out of it on the relatives who are poor, or on their education, or on an orphanage, or on some charitable thing. This is good. This is better than sometimes giving it away to anything. So the priority goes to the relatives who are poor. Then from the relatives, you go to look into a continuous charity, like digging a well for the poor people or for those in your vicinity, or giving that money to an organization which teaches the people the Quran, or these are called continuous works, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will guide the person inshallah to do the best. And he should look into prioritizing the things. And if he has poor relatives, he can give this wealth to them, and so on. Okay, and he goes to the next and the next, inshallah.
Okay, Jazakallah khair.
Ameen wa iyyak. Any more questions, brothers? But then, inshallah, if there is no questions, inshallah, next week we will carry on our class from the Fasid and Sahih. We'll go over them again, inshallah, quickly. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless you for your attentive listening, for attending the class. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما يا رب العالمين. اللهم نسألك الهدى والتقى والعفاف والغنى. اللهم إنا نعوذ بك من البرص والجنون والجذام ومن سيء الأسقام. اللهم احفظنا من بين أيدينا ومن خلفنا وعن أيماننا وعن شمائلنا، ونعوذ بك اللهم من نغتال من تحت رجلنا. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. وجزاكم الله خيرا جميعا. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
جزاك الله خير. آمين وجزاك الله خير. وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.